to talk about the future of Europe. But first, let us remember the past. 70 years ago, Europe was being torn apart by its second catastrophic conflict in a generation. A war which saw the streets of European cities strewn with rubble. The skies of London lit by flames night after night. And millions dead across the world in the battle for peace and liberty. As we remember their sacrifice, so we should also remember how the shift in Europe from war to sustained peace came about. It didn't happen like a change in the weather. It happened because of determined work over generations, a commitment to friendship, and a resolve never to revisit that dark past. A commitment epitomised by the Elysee Treaty signed 50 years ago this week. After the Berlin Wall came down, I visited that city, and I will never forget it. The abandoned checkpoints, the sense of excitement about the future, the knowledge that a great continent was coming together. Healing those wounds of our history is the central story of the European Union. What Churchill described as the twin marauders of war and tyranny have almost entirely been banished from our continent. Today, hundreds of millions dwell in freedom from the Baltic to the Adriatic, from the western approaches to the Aegean. And while we must never take this for granted, the first purpose of the European Union, to secure peace, has been achieved. And we should pay tribute to all those in the European Union, alongside NATO, who made that happen. But today, the overriding, the main purpose of the European Union is different. Not to win peace, but to secure prosperity. The challenges come not from within this continent, but from outside it, from the surging economies of the East and the South. Now, of course, a growing world economy benefits us all, but we should be in no doubt that a new global race of nations is underway today. A race for the wealth and for the jobs of the future. The map of global influence is changing before our eyes, and these changes are already being felt by the entrepreneur in the Netherlands, the worker in Germany, the family in Britain. So I want to speak to you today with urgency and frankness about the European Union and how it must change both to deliver prosperity and to retain the support of its peoples. But first I want to set out the spirit in which I approach these issues. Now I know that the United Kingdom is sometimes seen as an argumentative and rather strong-minded member of the family of European nations. And it is true that our geography has shaped our psychology. We have the character of an island nation. We are independent, forthright, passionate in defence of our sovereignty. We can no more change this British sensibility than we could drain the English Channel. And because of this sensibility, we come to the European Union with a frame of mind that is more practical than emotional. For us, the European Union is the means to an end. Prosperity, stability, and freedom and democracy both within Europe and beyond her shores, not an end in itself. We insistently ask, how? Why? To what end? But this doesn't make us somehow un-European. The fact is that ours is not just an island story. It is also a continental story. For all our connections to the rest of the world, of which we are mightily proud, we always have been European power, and we always will be. From Caesar's legions to the Napoleonic Wars, from the Reformation, Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution to the defeat of Nazism, we have helped to write European history. And Europe has helped to write ours. Over the years, Britain has made her unique contribution to Europe. We have provided our heavens to working tyranny and persecution. And Europe, that is ours. We help to keep the flame of liberty alight. Across the continent, in the silent countries, 100,000 of British servicemen who won the gift I love Europe's freedom. In more recent decades, we have played a theory down the archetype and shaping and trying in European Union, the countries that more managed communism. And continued in this story is the chronicle about Britain and our national character, about introducing Europe. Britain is characterized not just by its independence, but above all by its openness. We have always been a country that reaches out, turning its face to the world, that leads a chance a fight for free trade and a change Buddhism. This is Britain today. As it's always been, independent, but open too. I never want us to put up the draw and retreat the world. I'm not a British isolationist. But I do want a better deal for Britain. But not just about a deal for Britain. I want a better deal for Europe too. So being a British Prime Minister, a positive vision, a future for European Union. A future in which Britain wants and should want to play a committed and active part. Some might just ask, why raise fundamental question about the future of Europe? When Europe is already in the midst of a deep crisis, why raise question about Britain, Joe? When support in Britain is already so thin. There are always voices that say don't ask those difficult questions. But it's essential for Europe and Britain that we do. Because there are three major challenges covering us today. First, the problem is Europe, John. A drive fundamental change in Europe. Second, there is a crisis of European competitiveness. Another nation across the world solar ahead. And then the gap between EU and its citizens, which has grown dramatically in recent years, and which represents a lack of durability, availability, and consent that just felt gradually actually here in Britain. That we don't address these challenges, the dangers that Europe will fail, the British people and Britain want to raise it. I don't want that to happen. I want the European Union to be a success. And I want a relationship between Britain and European Union that keeps us in it. That's why I'm here today, to acknowledge the nature of challenges we face, and to set how we believe in the Union so to report to them. It is a plan that will achieve for Britain and play with the Union. So let me start with the nature of the challenges we face. First, the Eurozone. The future shape of Europe is being focused. There's some serious cases where we define the future of the European Union, the future of every country within it. The Union is changing to the physical currency. This is a profound implication for all of us, whether we are in a single currency or not. Britain is not a single currency, and we are not going to be. But we all need the Eurozone to have a right governance and structures to a successful currency to the long term. And those that outside the Eurozone also need to safeguard to ensure, for example, access to the single market is not anywhere from promised. And right as we begin to discuss those issues now. Second, while we are some countries within the EU which are doing pretty well, take a world, Europe shape of world about almost a third. In the next 2 days, this is a communist challenge, and much of our weakness in meeting is frankly except in fights. Complex rules directing labor markets are not sound, then clinical formal. There's an aesthetic relegation. It's not some internal pleasure that's been played on our businesses. The problems have been around for too long, and the progress dealing with them has been far too slow. As Chancellor Merkel has said, Europe of today has come for just over 7% of the world population for around 25% of global GDP. It's accompanying 50% of global social spending. It's obvious that we will have to work very hard to maintain its prosperity and way of life. Third, there is a growing frustration. The EU sees as something that is typical rather than on their behalf, and is being intercepted. Very solutions required to solve the economic problems. People are increasingly frustrated. The thing is taken further and further away from them, mean their living standards are strapped to exercise upon government and also the community. Listening to cities. Interruption on the street on Internet, Madrid and Rome, wasting implement of Berlin, Helsinki and Hangzhou. And still, of course, we are seeing information with the European Union, very clearly in United Kingdom. Europe leaders are duty to hear the consent. Indeed, we have duty to act on that. We not just feed the problems in the Eurozone. We just on in emergency, use the plan for the aftermath. We must deeply in the present crisis, so the long immediate on the present changes is a plan for future. What the world will look like when the difficulties in the Eurozone have been overcome. Now the biggest danger from the European Union comes not those who want to change, but from those who do new thinking and heresy. It's not long history and the influence of heretics. So we'll jump to the point, and my point is this. More of the same will not circulate London in the Eurozone, but the same will not receive the European Union keeping the pace with the new powerhouse economies. More the same will not bring the European Union close to its citizens. The same will just produce for more safe, less competitive, global free jobs, and not will make countries along with weaker. It's one for the French Center.
So let me set out my vision for the European Union of the 21st century. It is built on 5 principles. And the first is competitiveness. At the core of the European Union must be as it is now, the single market. Britain is the heart of single market and must remain so. But when the single market remains incomplete in services and energy and digital, the very sectors that are actually the engines of the modern economy, it is only half the success that it could be. It is nonsense that people shopping online in some parts of the world are unable to access the benefit simply because of I want complete the single market to be our driving engine. I want us to be at the forefront also of the transformative trade deals with the US, Japan, and India as part of the drive towards global free trade. And I want us to be pushing to exempt Europe's smallest entrepreneurial companies from more EU directives. These should be the officials, these should be the tasks that get European officials up in the morning and keep them working late into the night. And so we urgently need to address the sclerotic, ineffective decision-making that is holding us back. That means creating a leaner, less bureaucratic union, relentlessly focused on helping its member countries to compete. In the global race, can we really justify the huge number of expensive European institutions? Can we justify a commission that gets ever larger? Can we carry on with an organisation that has a multi-billion-pound budget, but not nearly enough focus on controlling spending and shutting down programmes that haven't worked? And I would ask this, when the competitiveness of the single market is so important, why is there then an environment council, a transport council, an education council, but not a single market council? Now the second principle should be flexibility. We need a structure that can accommodate the diversity of the EU's members, north, south, east, west, large, small, old and new. Some of whom are contemplating much closer economic and political integration, and many others, including who would never embrace that goal. Now, I accept, of course, that for the single market to function, we need a common set of rules and a way of enforcing them. But we also need to be able to respond quickly to the latest developments and trends. Competitiveness demands flexibility, choice and openness, or Europe will fetch up in a no man's land between the rising economies of Asia and the market-driven North America. The EU must be able to act with the speed and flexibility of a network, not the cumbersome rigidity unity of a bloc. We must not be weighed down by an insistence on a one-size-fits-all approach, which implies that all countries want the same level of integration. The fact is they don't, and we shouldn't assert that they do. Now some will claim that this offends a central tenet of the EU's founding philosophy. I would say it merely reflects the reality of the European Union today. 17 members are part of the Eurozone, 10 are not. 26 European countries are members of Schengen, including 4 outside the European Union: Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein and Iceland. Two countries, Britain and Ireland have retained their borders controlled. Some members like Britain and France are willing and able to be patient in liberal money. They are comfortable with EU force. Let us welcome that diversity. Instead of trying to snap it down, let us stop all this talk of the two-speed Europe, fast lanes and slow lanes and countries missing trains and buses. Frankly, let us consign the whole weary caravan of transport metaphors, if you like, to a permanent site. Instead, let us start from this proposition. We are a family of democratic nations, all members of the European Union, whose essential foundation is the single market, rather than the single currency. Those outside the euro recognize that some in it are likely to need some big institutional changes. And by the same token, the members of the Eurozone and so that we in member states have changed that we need to safeguard our interests and to strengthen the diplomatic legitimacy. We should be able to make these changes soon. Now we never say this until unravel of the EU, and then we'll compete in shoots of basics. What your nation needs. But I would argue far from unraveling the EU, this will in fact bind its members more closely, because such flexible, willing cooperation is much stronger glue than compulsion from the centre. Let me make a further theoretical proposition. The European Treaty commits the member states to lay the foundation of an ever closer union among the peoples of Europe. This has been consistently interpreted as applying not to the peoples, but rather to the states and institutions. And it's been compounded by a European Court of Justice that has consistently supported greater centralisation. Now we understand and respect the right of others to maintain their commitment to this goal. But for Britain and
the other objective,
and
we should be much comfortable. Especially carefully to South we want to go further, faster to do so. We're being held back the others.
So to those
who say we have to shoot for Europe,
I say we have.
We believe in flexible union. Within member states will share trade institutions and put together a cooperation to represent the values of European correspond in the world. To advance the third by interested by using a collective power to open markets and to build a strong economy that scope a world Europe. And we believe in our nation working together to protect the security, diversity, and energy supply, to climate change or global poverty, to work together against terrorism, grenades and crime, and we to welcome new countries into the European Union.
This
flexibility cooperation is not the same that we want to build an ever closer bloc with the Union, but just of a lead. My third principle is that power will be flowed back to member states, not just away from them. This was promised by European leaders last decades ago. It's put in the treaty, but it has never been properly fulfilled. We need to be implement the principle properly. So let's be the moment the Dutch Prime Minister has suggested under me totally what EU should do or stop doing. But we have already launched for balance of the contested review to give us an object analysis of the EU head and where it happens. and not reasonably lousy. A deep and workable single market requires everything to be harmonized, to anchor someone at the table and infinity, level playing field. Countries different, they are made different choices. We cannot harmonize everything. For example, it is neither right nor necessary to claim that the equity on a single market in the membership of the European Union requires the working poor Britain hospital doctor to be checked in Brussels irrespective of the views of British qualifications of practices. In the same, we need to examine whether it is balanced right. The recent European Union has legislated, including environment, social affairs and crime. Nothing should be off the table. My fourth principle is the quality accountability. We need to have a bigger, more and significant role for national parliaments. There is not, in my view, the single European demands. It's the national parliaments which are and will remain the true source of real democratic legitimacy. It could be you. Jungle and Chancellor Michael has the answer. He's going to rule the Greek provision and Tony's government and command his government as measures with British plastic that I want to counter evil budget manipulation and the significantly place in the single market. Those are plastic with proper respect and fear. It's international leaders. We need to but that the way to give you those businesses. My fifth problem is fairness. Whatever new arrangements we have brought up Eurozone, the good family for the country inside or outside it. There will be impractical to Britain. Emma said, we will not join the single currency. But there is no economic reason for the single currency and the single market is so shareability as a modern single market exchange or concentration in single market and ability to have self is the principal reason for membership of the EU. So it is vital reset for us to protect the integrity and fairness and the single market for all its members. And why Britain has been so connected, promoted and defended the single market as the Eurozone crisis had to rewrite the Western Convention and Banking Union. To these five principles provide then, I believe, the right approach for European Union. So let me turn to what this means for Britain. Today, public discount EU is an all-time high. There are several reasons for this. People feel like the EU is heading in a direction we will never seek to do. The result isn't different in our national life, but what they see in history, rules and regulations, and they wonder that the point of is always simply any us. But what can we have? What we should vote to join? A common market. We're going to find something my level into making Europe a life in Britain. Of course, of sympathy appearing from Europe in general, there is of course a European Council of Human Rights, the EU, and the Britain is leading European efforts to deal with this. And there is then much more that needs to be done at the front. People also feel the EU is now heading for a level of political integration. As far as Britain is comfort zone, treaty after treaty, changing compliance of member states and the EU, and will never give a say. They have not provision, they are not delivered. They say what happened to Europe, that they more than many of our political and business leaders of Britain at the time. And they haven't noticed my impression of confusion. And they look at the staff and the job is talking. And they wonder that deeper integration for the euro will mean for a country is not going to join the euro. The result is that becoming concern for EU in Britain is now wafer-thin. Some people say that point in this out is irresponsible, that it creates uncertainty for business and puts a question mark over Britain's place in the European Union. But the question mark is already there. Ignoring it is not going to make it go away. In fact, I would argue quite the reverse.
Those who refuse to contemplate consulting the British people would, in my view, make our exit more likely. Simply asking the British people to carry on accepting a European settlement over which they've had little choice is a path to ensuring that when the question is finally put, at some stage it will have to be. It is much more likely that the British people will reject the European Union. That is why I am in favour of having a referendum. I believe in confronting this issue, shaping, leading the debate, not simply hoping that a difficult situation will go away. Now some argue that the solution is therefore to hold a straight in-out referendum now. Now I understand the impatience of wanting to make that choice immediately, but I don't believe that to make a decision at this moment is the right way forward, either for Britain or for Europe as a whole. A vote today between the status quo and leaving would be an entirely false choice. Now, while the EU is in flux, and when we don't know what the future holds and what sort of EU will emerge from this crisis, is not the time to make such a momentous decision about the future of our country. It is wrong to ask people whether to stay or go before we've had a chance to put the relationship right. How can we sensibly answer the question, in or out, without being able to answer the most basic question? What is it exactly that we're choosing to be in or out of? The European Union that emerges from the Eurozone crisis is going to be a very different body. It will be transformed perhaps beyond recognition by the measures needed to save the Eurozone. We need to allow some time for that to happen and help shape the future of the European Union. So when the choice comes, it will be a real one. A real choice between leaving or being part of a new settlement in which Britain shapes and respects the rules of the single market, but is protected by fair safeguards and free of the spurious regulation that damages Europe's competitiveness. A choice between leaving or being part of a new settlement in which Britain is at the forefront of collective action on issues like foreign policy and trade, and where we leave the door firmly open to new members. A new settlement subject to the democratic legitimacy and accountability of national parliaments, where member states combine in flexible cooperation, respecting national differences and not always trying to eliminate them, and in which we have proved that some powers can in fact be returned to member states. In other words, a settlement which would be entirely in keeping with the mission for an updated European Union I have described today. More flexible, more adaptable, more open, fit for the challenges of the modern age. Now to those who say, and there are those who say, that a new settlement can't be negotiated, I would say to listen to the views of other parties in other European countries are yearning for power to flow back to European states. And also we have achieved already. We've ended the obligation for Britain to bail out the Eurozone. We've kept Britain out of the fiscal compact. We've launched a process to return to an existing Justice and Home Affairs Pact. We've secured protections on banking union and reformed common fisheries policy. So we're starting to shape the reforms that we need now. Now some of these things will not require treaty change. But I agree too with what President Barroso and others have said. At some stage in the next few years, the EU will need to agree on treaty change to make the changes needed for the long-term future of the euro and to entrench the diverse, competitive, democratically accountable Europe that we seek. Now, I believe the best way to do this will be in a new treaty. So today I add my voice to those who are already calling for this. Now my strong preference is to enact these changes for the entire European Union, not just for Britain. But if there is no appetite for a new treaty for us, and if there is no appetite for a new treaty for us, or for us all, then of course Britain would be ready to address the changes we need in a negotiation with our European partners. So the next Conservative Manifesto in 2015 will ask for a mandate from the British people and Congress and government to negotiate a new settlement with our European policy in the next parliament, in relationship with the single market and desert. And we have negotiated that new settlement with the British people and referendum and don't hope on a choice to say with equal with the external terms what time we talk together. We will now referendum. Legislation will be drafted before the next election. The government is elected will be introduced the implementing regulation immediately and passed by the end of January. It will be complete with the nation will hold the referendum within the first half of the next month parliament. It's time to British people have their say. It's time for a settled discussion about Britain and Europe. I will say to British people, this will be your decisions. And then when choice comes, we will have an important choice to make about your country's destiny. Now understand our pair of going it alone of charging on our cause. But if we want the question, we will have to take with cool heads. Proven of the side of the argument, we need to more exciting their cause. But Britain could to make her own way in the world outside the EU we choose to do so. Normally one of member states, the question will be how to our services. The best for our country. We will have to wait carefully where our true national interests live. Along we would have to take our decision. It's just been referred for solemn obligation but never less NATO. We delete NATO because it is in your national interest to say. And benefit from the collection defense barons. We have more power and influence when printing sanctions on Iran or Syria or probably in Burma. We can be together. With the EU, we cannot, of course, lead Europe. If we remain many years or biggest or market, a frequent neighborhood will turn more complex of legal commitment. Hundreds of thousands of British people now take granted their right to work and retire in any other European country. Even if we pull out the country, this doesn't make it the EU will continue to have profound effect on our country. But we can have to our remaining vetoes and our voice in the discussions. We would need to wake up carefully with the process know we belong to inside the EU and the external market as full member. Continue decide to against the single markets and as I've said, absolutely vital for British businesses and British jobs. Since 2004, Britain has been the destination for one of five or inverse investment into Europe. That being a single market has been absolutely key to have achievement. There will be plenty of time to take our government thoroughly, favor against and government and we know the tape. We never just saw deal in one point and we have here a lot about. There are some who suggest we can turn ourselves in no way else with the land is we get to the single market but outside the EU. But the world that really hang out bad national interest. I remind those the country and they more friends but they are different to us. Norway is the biggest energy reserve in Europe has been worth over 500 billion euro. And Norway is the draft of the single market and they for the principle. He has no say on interesting its rules. He has to implement and directives. The Swiss to get the single market sector by sector. If you obviously they have to say, or else it's not full access to single market, including the professional service. The fact is that to you for operation like the EU, there are rules. You will not always get what you want, but does not mean when you should live with the benefits of staying and working together and return. We would have to think carefully too about the impact of our influence at the top table of international affairs. No power powerful in Washington or Beijing in Delhi will powerful play in the European Union. The matter in British jobs and British security. It matters our ability to get things done in the world. It matters to the United States and other friends around the world. Would we start many fail us very clearly to they want Britain to remain in the EU.
So we should think carefully before giving this precision. Besides, if we left the European Union, this would be one-way ticket, not a return. So we have a time of proper, reasonable debate. At the end of the debate, you British people will decide. As to the European partners, truth is that going to them no part by written attitudes. Work with us on this. Consider the extraordinary step with these European members or talking to keep people together. With a year ago, we would have the same output. It does not seem to me. The steps with you be to make Britain another more comfortable. In our relationship in the European Union, it's basically, but more unreasonable. I believe that Britain should want to remain in the EU. So the EU wants us to say, because the Euro way of Britain, but when some people are stronger